Hello everyone. So today we are going to work on sit, and a lot of your dogs probably have already done sit before. Even if they have, it's a very common thing to teach. Typically it's one of the first things people do teach, which is a good thing. I don't want to make that sound like a bad thing. It's very important to teach them because if our dogs are sitting, what aren't they doing, right? I'll give you a second to think about that. Right? My answers are they aren't jumping up. They aren't counter surfing. They aren't, getting into trouble elsewhere and going potty on the other side of the house. If our dogs are sitting near us, our dogs are, ideally facing us. And of course, to be fair, I am kind of bribing her with cheese as I'm getting ready to do the exercise. But, if our dogs are sitting there hanging out, it's going to be a lot easier for us to get behaviors that we want as opposed to behaviors that we don't want. So that's why it tends to be one of the first things we teach, because it gives us this aspect of control. So even if your dog has done sit before, we're going to pretend that they haven't. This is for a few reasons. One is dogs don't generalize. What that means is what your dog learns in one room, they don't automatically transfer to another. So if your dog learns sit at home, I don't know if you in particular feel this way, but a lot of people will say to me, my dog does this great at home, right? We teach it. My dog sits as soon as I bring the treat out. They've got it down pat. And then they come to class and the dog is having a really hard time and the owner is having to ask them to sit multiple times and they're still not doing it. It's probably in part because of the distractions, but it's also probably because they've never done it in that particular environment. So if you think of it like a math problem, a lot of math problems might be presented in one particular way, but that's not the only way you can use them. And of course, I would give an example if I was better at math, but I'm not, so I can't. But there's a lot of times where I remember distinctly seeing a problem on a test that I didn't see on the homework, so I had a hard time figuring out how to apply it, and then as soon as the teacher would show me, oh, here's what you do, I would understand. And so, just seeing that way to apply it in a different environment doesn't come naturally to dogs in the beginning. So that's why we have to teach it in as many places as possible in order to get a really nice result. So we're going to pretend that they don't know it for that reason. Also because we're going to teach it a bit differently, and we're not going to teach it extremely differently, right? We're not going to, stand on our hands and get our dogs to sit or anything. But what we want is we want our dogs to remain in a sit until we give them permission to get up. So that's going to be the difference that we work on today. So there's lots of little steps to this. My first is just getting my dog to be lured into that sit. And so I'm going to start off if my dog is in a down, right? A lot of people will say, but my dog is already sitting or my dog is laying down. What do I do? All you have to do is take the treat, pull it forward so the dog stands up. Once they do, you're going to lure up and back in line with their spine. As soon as their butt hits the ground, as soon as their butt hits the ground, you're going to say yes. Yes is that positive behavior marker that we worked on. So as soon as you say yes, you give them the treat, you get them up to try again. Yes, and reward. Reset. You can do it with multiple hands to work on that generalization. Yes, good job. Notice my treat is right next to her nose. There's not a huge gap. It's not all the way up here. There's a reason that I'm not standing when I first teach this. I may or may not have mentioned I'm typically more comfortable when I first work with a dog sitting down anyway, but I want to make sure that my hand is right next to their nose. There's not a huge gap, right? With Misha, it's easy because I can stand and have that treat right next to his nose, but with Albie, I'd have to bend. So just to make it easier on myself, I get myself down nice and low so I can keep my hand really close to her nose and give her the signal that I want her to do, specifically what I want her to do. So notice I didn't say the word. That's because, again, I'm assuming they've never done it before. And I need my dog to perform a behavior at least 5 times in a row perfectly before I start to add the cue. And, of course, we can do more. You can do less, but you might get a less reliable behavior in the long run. It's always better to set a really good foundation And that goes for anything, right? You don't want to build a house on a really bad foundation. You will probably regret it later. But same thing with our dog training, right? We don't want to have a really nice behavior that's placed on top of a really rickety foundation. So it's always better, in my opinion, to practice this even hundreds of times without even saying the word. And this way we don't waste the word. So this way when it is introduced, it becomes important. Okay? So that's our first step, is just getting her to follow the lure, mark with our yes, and then dispense the treat. The second step is adding the release word. And I want to add the release word first so I get the dog used to the concept. Misha's photobombing us here. I apologize. Getting them used to the concept of us giving them permission to get up. So the word that you use does not matter. It can be okay. It can be all done. I've had people use cool. I've had people use giddy up. Does not matter. As long as it's consistent from behavior to behavior. So when we're teaching our dogs a release word, right, that's not going to change. Our cues are going to change. So what I mean by that is, asking my dog to sit, I want something different than when I ask my dog to lay down, or when I ask my dog to touch my hands, or, kiss my nose, or something like that. I'm always looking for something different. So I want to have a different word for that. My release word is different. It's going to be the same no matter what behavior I'm doing, because I'm always looking for the same thing. I'm always looking for duration. So I'm going to add my release word. Have treats in my hands. I lure her into a standing position. I lure, yes. And okay, notice I do that before I move my hands. So I'm not doing this. Yes, okay. Because a lot of dogs will pop up before I say that release word, especially when we're first teaching it, because, our dogs are very forgiving, but timing is really important. So if I do this, yes, good job. Very good. That was really nice. Good girl. And then my dog, she's being very good, but okay, good girl, very nice. If my dog happens to pop up before I say my release word, it becomes meaningless. So the release word always has to come before my dog gets up. So lure, yes, okay. And then reward with a second treat. So at this point, my dog is getting 2 rewards for 1 sit. And that's because they're learning it, right? Again, we're pretending my dog has never done it before. Albie very clearly knows how to sit. Just by the way she's responding, she's blowing through all of these. But again, I'm pretending she doesn't know it. So my next thing is I'm going to do exactly the same thing, only add my cue in front of it. So sit, lure, yes, okay. And she gets 1 more when she pops up. Sit, lure, yes, okay. So it's cue, they do the behavior, marker, they get their treat, I release them, they get up, and then they get another treat. So if we take out all of their actions, right, it's cue, mark, release, treat. Cue, mark, release, treat. I want you guys to get that in your head, because that's the pattern that we use for 90% of behaviors. The only times we're going to not use that specific path, right, is when we have a behavior that we want automatically. So this automatic down that Misha is so kindly offering us, right, I didn't ask for this, so I didn't cue him to do it. I might end up rewarding it and reinforcing it when I get it, and then I might release him when I want him to get up, but I'm not going to have to ask him for it. Or if we have a behavior that doesn't require duration. So for example, touch, right? Touch, personally, you can teach it this way, but I personally don't teach it as a behavior that requires duration. I don't need my dog to keep their nose on my hands for an extended period of time. Touch. All I need is for them to touch their nose to my hands. So that's an example of a behavior that won't require duration, all right? That's the only time I'm gonna cut it up. So that's really the basics of sit, teaching it for the very first time for a dog that doesn't know it. So this is not getting them to a point just yet where we're able to ask them just using our verbal cue or our hand signal. We'll get to that point, but for right now, we're just getting them to a point where I am saying the cue, luring them, reinforcing them, releasing them, reinforcing them. Once I get there, I can start to cut out my middle treat. So it will look like this. Sit. Yes. Okay. She doesn't get the treat until she gets up. It might have been hard for you to see. I'll show you a little bit more clearly. Sit. Yes. Okay. And she's throwing a paw in there, which I actually don't want. Sit. Yes. Oh, yes. Okay. Good. Very nice. If you get behaviors you don't want, just try to wait it out. Sit. Yes. Okay. Good. Very nice. And only actually reward when that paw is on the ground or that behavior isn't happening. You know, for her, she's 10 years old. I don't care as much, but with a lot of dogs, people will think it's cute in the beginning, right? You get this, you know, this really adorable little pit puppy or pit bull puppy, and you know, they're super cute and they're just, oh my goodness, and they're just so excited to paw at you because they're like, hey, I gave you my treat, my paw, and I get a treat for that. And, you know, it's the most fantastic little thing for them. And we love it because their excitement gets us really excited. But then when we have a 50-pound pitty, and I don't know if anybody knows anything about pitty nails, but at least from my experience, pit bulls tend to have very long, hard nails, just for whatever reason. Don't know why. You know, of course, a lot of it has to do with grooming. I'm not saying it goes for everybody. But, you know, they have such big paws, and so the big nails go along with it. And so, you know, if you get a dog that as soon as they sit, they do this, when they're really big and really strong, we don't necessarily want that. So trying to make sure we're cleaning up these behaviors now when we're working on them, again, creating that really solid foundation. You know, so if Albie was my baby puppy, what I would probably do is keep working where I'm luring her as opposed to bringing my hand away. Because what it's implying to me is that when my hand is away, she's thinking I'm doing this, right? And I'm asking her to wave her hands or her paw. And just trying to make it really clean in terms of my body language, what I'm actually asking for her. So again, we can get to a point where we're not rewarding for the sit itself, but simply after we release them, then you can start to stand up a bit more and repeat the same process. But we're not worrying too much about just being able to ask with the verbal cue or just being able to ask with the hand signal right now. We're still focusing on that really good, solid foundation. And again, don't be afraid if you go to a new place, if you go to a new, there's a new distraction, and you have to backtrack, or you feel like your dog will be more successful if you do. Don't be afraid to do that. I would much rather you lure the dog 2 or 3 times, and it doesn't have to be a lot, right? If I was doing this with Albie and we were, you know, for example, in an environment with another dog, I might lure her into a sit twice, and then I might ask her to sit twice, you know, before I have faith that she's able to do it with just, you know, my hand or just my voice. You know, I might just end up I might end up going through those steps, but I'm just doing it more quickly because she already has practice under her belt. Okay? So that was the beginnings of sit and also kind of the beginnings of our automatic stay or stay. So thank you guys for watching, and I hope to see you guys next time.